Well, let's get going. Shoot.
Yep.
All right. Let's keep it high and tight. Get this thing rolling, huh? All right. We're back for another ep. We got the ninja head guy.
Leah made that.
That's cool.
Chris's niece.
My niece
I like
made
this.
that. Yeah.
This guy. We got the CEO, the femme fatale, the female black belt, jiu-jitsu lady, Melissa Haueter.
The broken lady.
No, the badass lady.
Okay.
We got the OG, the venerable Chris Haueter.
Woohoo.
The broken man.
We got Calvin with a busted wrist over there.
The broken baby.
Poor little Calvin.
Yeah, he's going like this. Yeah.
The one thing that I know is true, and I remember hearing this when I was young, is that the first time when you're older and all injured and complain, every other older injured person, which is all of us, looks over at you like, come on. You're acting as if you're the anomaly.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because anyone who's in this
Injury?
long enough is going to be broken.
Hold on right there.
Yeah.
Injury and pain is part of life.
That's right.
It doesn't matter whether you do jiu-jitsu, you play on a swing set, you run cross country like our daughter who had a boot for the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
John? Oh, yeah. You've been injured? See? All right, moving on.
All
we
right.
have
John behind the lens,
John.
Yay.
the man, and then Tobin, the producer. Here we are. Okay, we're going to talk about hierarchy today.
Boy.
We want to hear a little more about what hierarchy is, where it comes from, and then maybe bounce it off of martial arts a little bit and understand how martial arts can be a good place to do some anthropological work and think about how groups of people work. And then we'll also talk about democracy, which I don't think these are necessarily like opposite ideas, but I think maybe like democracy can support a hierarchy, which is something that happens naturally. And maybe we can talk about these two ideas and give some people maybe some deeper understanding about what they're experiencing while they're doing jiu-jitsu, because you went through it early on in jiu-jitsu and learned about a culture and how groups of people work and come together and form, and you've been doing that for a long time. So hopefully we can talk about that. But before we get going, we just want to say thanks to our Patreon supporters. We got some people hitting the Patreon.
That's
Thank
rad.
you guys.
Thank
Super
you.
rad.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. That's awesome.
Keep this pod going.
Keep the pod going. And we got some YouTube supers. It's been super awesome. We really appreciate the support. Again, if you want to be a part of the Combat Base Club, you can use the promo code podcast10 to get...
Oh, that's backwards.
You can
The
use...
promo code podcast is for the first month free at the Combat Base Club.
Right.
Podcast 10 will give you 10% off merchandise.
Merchandise, yeah. And we got that new gear in.
Oh, we got some new hoodies.
I got
and shirts. Think
some-
Street, Train Sport, Practice Art.
I got some compliments. I was wearing that shirt, and a couple people came up to me and they're like, "Oh, that's such a cool saying."
Did you say combatbase.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were
Thank
totally
you.
non-jiu-jitsu, and I was
That's
just
fine.
like, "Yeah,
No, when we break through to the non-jiu-jitsu market,
That's
we've
epic.
we've made it.
yeah."
That's
One last thing. So the easiest way to support us for free is to just like and subscribe
Yes.
Yes.
and comment.
Like and subscribe and comment.
But when
Comment
you,
a lot.
But when you
Hit
like,
the hotline.
yes. When you like, you can't just like. You got to pound it.
Yeah.
Right?
Pound that like button.
And then we'll do hotline stuff later. So let's get into it. Okay. So you talk about hierarchy all the time, and you so far as you call it the hierarchy. What are we talking about? What is that?
the one thing that I always like to say, because I know how our human brains binarily think, is what is always lost is nuance. And nuance is everything. And it seems like if a person is talking about hierarchy, they must be dissing on it, saying hierarchy is wrong and it's bad and all that stuff. And that's definitely not what I think. I think hierarchy just fucking is. Like injury, it's just the way human nature is. It's the way pack animals fall into order, which is like one of the things, like the problem with Marxism is it's a wonderful description of the problem with a horrible prescription or solution. But because our binary brains miss nuance, We want to throw the whole thing out. The same thing with fascism. Fascism is a wonderfully efficient way to hierarchically organize humans to accomplish a goal. But obviously that comes with ramifications that are very bad. And for the philosopher, as soon as we have even the slightest opinion, the brain instantly pigeonholes you as being convicted to that opinion or an ideology. And like I tell people, my opinion changes not only every day and every month, but literally every 5 minutes when I'm thinking about whether something is quote unquote good or bad. Knowing that I'm falling into a binary, knowing that I can't even get out of it. The only hope I have is to try to gain a third perspective or a Hegelian approach, which is, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And then that creates another thing that becomes the solution. It seemingly works wonderful until you realize it has a flaw. And then you find the flaw in that and go, oh my God, let's fix that flaw. Oh, there's another flaw. And I even like Schopenhauer, who was the biggest critic of Hegel, so it's not even like I'm a Hegelian, which is why I say I'm a Hegelian Taoist, which anyone who understands how Taoism works, I encourage you to YouTube it and go down a rabbit hole. What is the Tao? Tao. And you'll find that, that's almost like the Eastern version of Renaissance, Age of Reason thinking, but more in a flowy pattern way, and a way to see the world as accurately as you can, accepting that you will never know truth, because then you're making something permanent out of something that's always dynamic. I
and
know
it's where that yin yang thing came from.
Yes,
It's
a
from
world
Taoism.
of opposites. It actually came far later, but
It's based on that?
As in-
Taoism? That's the only thing I know.
sort of, kind of. But the yin and yang visually and metaphorically captures the essence of the binary trap that we're in. And the Tao.
So it's Hegelian.
It's both Hegelian and Taoistic.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to relate it to maybe people who don't study philosophy like you do.
Yes. So back to
Like
the
me.
hierarchy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say you're an advocate of democracy. You absolutely think that everything should be egalitarian and fair. And then you have kids and your kid starts arguing with you because they don't think you're being reasonable. And there's 2 parents and 5 kids, and the kids want to all vote on what we do. Sometimes you have to be an authoritarian, right? Let's say you are...
That's where I think that's a binary trap right there.
That is a binary trap.
Authoritarian or democracy. I think there's another way, which we call authoritative.
Authoritative. Okay.
And that is the parenting style, which
All right.
I choose to try to employ to the best of my ability, but I kind of suck at it.
Let's say it's an example. You're on a 6-man assault team and you have a narrow window to go make an entry through a door, breach it, recover a hostage, stop the guy from clacking off a nuke, whatever it is. Are you going to vote? Or is one person going to be in charge and make it happen? It's more efficient to have one human in charge to make it happen. Take that back 100,000 years. You're in a hunting tribe. Clearly somebody has to lead that hunt, and people have to be willing to do what they are told, or you don't eat. And that gene dies off. So that's why we have a follower gene as much as a thing. So, but
authoritarian and leader are not equal.
True.
You can choose to have a leader in a democracy. You can choose to say this person's going to be my coach, or this is my mentor. This
in
is somebody
jiu-jitsu, yes.
in anything.
No. When you have 6 guys and 3 minutes to make a choice, we can't start arguing about who's
But
in
it's
charge.
not. But see, that's where I'm disagreeing with you, because
okay.
I don't think that when I choose that person's the leader, I don't argue. But I'm making the choice that I want that person to be the leader of this thing, but it doesn't mean that they have control over me. They're leading me through this specific operation. They're not going to tell me when I can go to the bathroom, 3 months from now or what meal
Yeah,
I can eat.
I'm not talking about that. I'm speaking of purely in the moment. There are
Okay.
times where authoritarian style leadership is the efficient way. And there are times where the other forms of leadership are less efficient in order to accomplish a task that has to happen right effing now. And we can't start arguing whether it's fair that you go through the door first. It just, the people have to be willing to do what it is. And so, oftentimes, and again, here's where we bring in nuance, because I don't mean that that's like, oh, I'm now arguing for authoritarianism. I'm not. I'm trying to point out that there are moments of time where that is truth. That goes the whole postmodern view about, like, I am someone who loves postmodern philosophy, but objectively critiques it, which is very modern of me, because they're both relative. And then someone say, oh, you're getting into moral relativism and we need objectivity. And like, there's a whole long philosophical debate about this that's been going on in the West for the last 200 years. Is there such thing as objective morality? Is there such thing as objective truth? Or is all truth relative and all morality relative?
So it sounds like basically what we got going on is right when we started talking here, you were saying that when people are talking about hierarchy, sometimes they have like a negative connotation
Yes.
to hierarchy. And I think what they're talking about is authoritarianism. That's what they're disliking. Because hierarchy seems to me just like a group of people come together, whatever that group values, whoever has most of those values ends up being at the top of the hierarchy because they can serve.
What brings them to the top? What process?
What process? I don't know.
I would say time and
Brings it.
experience.
It
I'm
all
not too sure.
depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the guy ahead appointed them and
Yeah.
said, I'm making you in charge of the group. Sometimes
Right.
it's a religion
Right.
that says you are the anointed one.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's through a process of democracy, whether it's representative democracy, which is what America is like one of the common things that you'll hear on the internet all the time. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. A republic is a form of a democracy, which is what, we're not a pure democracy. If we put up on the ballot, should we have a slavery? And if 51% of the people say yes, do we institute slavery? No, because we're also a republic that protects the minority group.
Right.
So the republics, like the form of the government based on the age of reason and age of enlightenment and going back to the Greeks and the Romans and finding out where they made mistakes, where a bunch of young, in their 20s and early 30s, European men wrote the Constitution. And they argued about it for days, trying to find what are the flaws that will enable some despotic leader to rise or fall back into monarchy. And they did an ingenious job of creating a system of checks and balances, a system in which change is very slow. And people who are activists, be they right or the left, want change fast. But this system is not made to go fast for the very reason, because then you might do something really dumb, because 51% of the people think slavery is a good idea. And I just use that because at that time there were 50% who thought slavery was a good idea. And they did a compromise, because democracy is compromise. And a republic works on the form of a compromise. And in the age of extremes, people are less and less interested in compromise and buying into the propaganda often fed by Russia and China to get you to believe compromise is a bad word, that compromise is the evil, that you're selling out. If you vote for that Republican, he's not a real Republican, he's a rhino.
Sure.
If you vote for this, the Dem, they're actually a pro-corporate, pro-war Dem. You're not really on the progressive side. And that takes a snowplow through the the middle, pushing moderates to have to choose a binary choice. And what I say is my choices I'm not going to choose. Because to make a choice is already falling into the trap.
But he does vote, okay? He does vote.
That doesn't mean I vote.
I thought people could take that as you saying I don't make
You're right.
choices, I'm not going to vote.
Because they're thinking binary.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. In Australia, you have to vote or you get fined.
Wow.
That's
Forced
interesting.
democracy.
That seems kind of
Sounds
like,
authoritarian.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, another way a hierarchy can form is by skills, right? So like a more primitive form
Meritocracy.
would be skills based, right? So like a group goes out to hunt, the guy that can
The best hunter
land the kill actually is the
becomes
alpha,
the leader.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Automatically, my brain goes to I think of our little community, and I wasn't who I am when I started 20 years ago. I didn't come in and control the mat and tell people to Iron Man, and I couldn't do any of that. That was something that I gained over time of watching him and growing into a leader, right? You don't just you can't just like become a leader. I mean, you can.
Yes.
But not a very good one, I don't think. You don't think you can become a leader without having experience being a follower.
Yep.
And every good leader is also a good follower.
Yes.
And they know when to yield and how to, what's that word? Delegate.
Yeah.
And stuff like
And there's great quotes on what makes good leaders. There's like great books on it, great academies. Like one of the best schools I ever did was an Army school. There was a speech given by a colonel that just resonated very much on the essence of leadership. How, like with jiu-jitsu, it's a practice, it's an art. It's not something you just naturally are born with and you have it. You might be born with natural athletic abilities, but you're not born a black belt. It's a practice, and good leaders are humble and know it's an art and know that they will fuck up. Not, okay, I'm going to do everything right. I'm not going to fuck up again. That's already a sign of bad leadership mindset. So it's yeah.
There's a lot of growth through mistakes.
Yes.
There's a lot of mistakes made as a leader. My perspective of just what we do, we've made a lot of mistakes, but we also have the ability to self-reflect and to think about how we might do those things differently in the future. And I think we very much try to be those people.
And a good leader, ideally, is more concerned with their team than they are themselves. A bad leader tends to be more concerned with themselves and how can I get this team to do what I want for me. That usually, to me, is a sign of a bad leader.
But not always a rich leader.
One might ask, how does that happen? Like, because I think, especially for the last 3 generations, we're raised in a Disneyland-style youth that tends to make us believe that the good side always wins, that most people want to do the right thing and be good. And maybe it's true, but whether that was true 200 years ago or not, that now is the current meme and paradigm that we are raised in. Like me as a kid was raised watching children's TV, which has improved over the years, but the good people generally win. And innocence is lost when we realize that is not always true. That's like kind of that thing where...
Well, is that why they make the parents die in the movies all the time? Kids' movies? Like Land Before Time or Simba, Lion King or whatever?
That's because it reflects the hero's journey.
Okay.
Whether it's Jesus or Luke Skywalker or whoever it is, it's the young apprentice who is seemingly having a normal life and is lost, and then gets picked on, and then runs into the Obi-Wan who says, I'm going to help you. And then they're a purple belt, but they can't wait to be a black belt, and their Obi-Wan dies. And they have to assume leadership. And in those other ones, the parent dies, and they have to assume leadership when they feel like they aren't ready.
So it's not all Disneyland.
I'm just saying as a model of, as a template. That's very like, it's a template. It's the hero's journey is the template in which we tell a story. And is that because we studied the human and found out that that's what the human does? Or did somebody create that and now we act it out? It's like, what came first? The narrative and then the behavior? Or did the behavior come first and we identified the pattern of the behavior and saw that's the narrative?
Well, we don't want to raise depressed kids.
No, we don't.
So, but because I don't really see the world that way. I think there's a lot of fear, and like our kids have to do active shooter drills at school. Like there's no Disneyland about that. They're doing one next week at the high school. Like we have to do these things that are really gnarly now, and there's a lot of kids over here. All the things, as you did when you were a kid. You were extremely scared child. I was an extremely scared child. My dad had so much anxiety. Like,
that's the thing too.
I didn't grow up in Disneyland culture. I like Disneyland. I love Disneyland.
I love Disneyland. I love escaping there. To me, when it's uncrowded, it really is the happiest place on earth. When it's crowded, to me, it's hell on earth. That's because I have an issue with crowds. I get anxietous in crowds. I just have this feeling like all my control issues, which I don't have a lot of, but in crowds, I get that. Like I feel like I have no control over whether this crowd moves like a wave and crushes me because that crowd panicked because something happened over there. And like, I don't like crowds, but
rainy days at Disneyland, they're the best.
They're the best. But I was going to say, and people think I'm talking bad about religion, and I don't mean this to be bad in any way. But I remember I had roommates that were all very religious. And for about 2 years, we would have at least once a week long debates about philosophy, religion, and all that. They were going through college to become ministers, and I was going through college basically undeclared biology and or art. So like we're kind of at these polar ends of the thing. And I remember I went to a church thing because I'm open-minded and want to experience everything. And I was watching adults with their arms like this. And my sister had kids at that time. And she came out over the holidays and I saw her kids going, "Mommy, pick me up." And I realized how long, because I'm in school at the time learning basic human biology and sociology, like whatever classes, and realizing humans have such a long childhood. We spend so much time in absolutely needing the adult that we look up to. You're looking up. And when I saw these adults in church doing that same thing, I realized how biological religion is. How wired it is into not only our culture, but our biology. And that to even if you're right and say religion is wrong, to fight against that is fighting against your biology. And
nature.
Yes, just like we also have a nature, like a dog sniffs at other dogs' butts. I hate to say it, humans still have that genetic drive as well. But we have learned that transmits illness, right? So we have dueling drives. And the duality of all of our drives, I think more than any animal, because we have language and the ability to think about the past, the present, the future, whereas I think most animals, I'm sure advanced mammals like dolphins and whales spend some time thinking about
elephants
the
are
past.
really smart.
Yeah.
Pigs, I heard pigs were really smart.
Pigs are really
But I know
smart.
that Sadie doesn't know that one day she's going to die. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty
but
sure
we
too.
all do.
So on the dog sniffing butts point, next time you shake someone's hand, or you see somebody else shake their hand, watch how quickly people will touch their face after.
It's true.
It's a true thing.
Yeah.
It's inherent.
It's a wired instinct
to smell that person.
Yes.
Right after you make contact with them. Just be
I don't
cognizant
even like
that
touching people.
You'll notice it.
And it's true too. Any of you guys who are grunts out there, or if you were really avidly into backpacking, but you're in much smaller groups when you backpack. After a week of not our regular modern world of a shower every day, for most of human existence, showers and cleaning yourself off was rare. In the times of the plague, they believed that water carried the plagues. So for at times 2 generations, nobody bathed or showered. And our smell sense was way more integrated in our culture. That's where the French created perfumes. And you could identify friend or foe by smell, by what they regularly ate, what you regularly ate, much more like how a dog. And one of the reasons why humans co-evolved so well with dogs is because our weakest areas, which is our nose and our hearing, our eyes are really good. The dog has kind of bad eyes, but great hearing and nose. Like, what a fucking team. That dog could smell a tiny droplet of blood in an area the size of a football field, where we could never do that. But we can spot a dude walking 1,000 yards away and go, he's wearing a friendly helmet or an enemy helmet, whereas the dog can't. And as a team, as a hunting team and a war team, dogs are man's best friend. And we've genetically evolved to really love our dogs. Like, I don't...
babies.
Yes. I tend to not trust people who don't like dogs, unless I find out they were bitten as a kid or have a genuine reason to not like dogs. And I think, both for comfort, for warmth, you're sleeping with a dog, you're working your dog, there are working dogs, there are toy dogs, there are pet dogs. Of course, I always like working dogs, but Melissa knows they're a lot of work. So we don't have
We had 2 big dogs at once. We had a lot of problems with those 2 big dogs. Yes. And if you're not willing to take and train and do the appropriate thing with said dog, you should not have one.
And once they get a taste of blood and have a prey drive, you can't unwire that instinct. Yeah. It's not an instinct that you can unwire. So back to hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
A jiu-jitsu. I often, people ask, usually people who don't do the jiu-jitsu, is why do you guys like it so much? What is it? And I believe, all these things that we've spoken about, our propensity for smell and touch and feel and grabbing and community and natural forms of leadership, all of that happens on a mat in a very organic way. Now, are there problems that happen on mats too? Yes. Are there the ability for charlatans to come in and make a jiu-jitsu cult? Yes. But is that true with anything? I think so.
Absolutely.
I don't think the jiu-jitsu, maybe I'm wrong, is plagued with poor leadership or cult-like behavior any more than other subculture groups.
I would argue possibly less.
I'd say possibly less.
Yeah, because I think that I think a lot of the issues that come up come from the hierarchy being created out of these.
Out of who beats who?
No. Oh, for jiu-jitsu, I think that's the pure, right?
Yes.
So the hierarchy is created out of a pure context. Where
meritocracy more.
It's who beats who, it's skills based, there's a purity to it.
Yeah.
Whereas in other groups, I think the hierarchy can form differently.
Lie better.
It's who can lie better,
who's
who
more
can cheat more,
yes.
who's more charismatic, who
Yeah.
can burn and take advantage of more people might get a higher spot in the hierarchy, but there's a purity to the jiu-jitsu group, like we were just saying. So, yeah, that's what I think.
I think so.
I think it's has less leadership problems because of it.
But you can couple the skills with some of those other things, and then that's what causes a problem. When when the leaders take advantage of
I just think that's
students.
an inherent problem with hierarchy is there's always going to be the temptation for the leadership to take advantage
to
of
abuse power.
To abuse power. And I think with the what the consideration is for somebody listening to this is to understand that any group that you get into is going to have a hierarchy.
Yes.
And you have to understand the history of that hierarchy. How did that hierarchy come to be? So you can have a feeling about what it is and
Yes.
how it's structured and what's happening within the hierarchy. And then maybe make an assessment of like, how is this group being governed?
And
I
that's
think
like why
that's
I
the other question. Right?
opened up with the ideal of communism.
Yeah.
You're naively thinking, oh, I'm going to be in this world where there's no hierarchy. Some of the worst hierarchies come out of getting a bunch of naive people thinking we're going to do away with the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And because you cannot, because that is who we are. Until we biologically evolve into a different creature, we are bound by the biology that we have.
Yeah.
And perhaps we will, through AI, splicing genes and all that other stuff, be able to alter that for the next generation. And that would ask, are we human anymore? Which goes to the, like, one of my favorite philosophical things, like the ship of Theseus, right? So say you build a boat, and which takes all these planks of wood and all that stuff in the mast. And then in 5 years, this end gets hit by a cannonball, so you replace that. And then eventually, what if you've replaced every plank on the boat? Is it the same boat?
Right.
And that's true with our bodies. Supposedly once every 7 years, you have completely new cells of everything, because
Cell regeneration.
so it means the essence of you is the process of generation. That is what we're talking about. The boat is a concept, not a physical object. It's
I don't really exist.
I was going to say the spirit of the boat's the same.
spirit of the boat is
Yeah.
more important than the physicality of the
physicality of it,
boat.
yeah.
So oftentimes when people ask me, am I spiritual? And my answer is yes, they don't know what I even mean.
Right.
What I'm talking about is literally spirit, meaning the opposite of material.
Yeah.
Yes, I am very spiritual.
Yeah.
And I see people that claim spirituality to really be materialists.
Yeah.
They're getting into stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff is the manifestation.
Yeah. Interesting. So someone
I was going to
needs.
say something else that was really important about jiu-jitsu hierarchies, but I was going to say, I'm sure somebody's out there has seen those. They're often at like Subway sandwich shops or whatever, the plexiglass box that has a bonsai tree. Fill here if you're interested in learning the secrets of Asian martial arts or whatever it is.
The way of the shadow.
The Way of the Shadow. They were really popular about 20 years ago.
Something
but I
about self-defense.
wrote my name in one and found out quickly it was an MLM. It's a multi-level marketing thing, and they open up a shop, and what they're selling you on is that you're going to be a jiu-jitsu, or not, a martial arts school owner, the Way of the Dragon, call it. And I even had a patch, and I wanted to put it on my gi.
They gave you a patch?
I somehow acquired a patch. I acquired a patch from a uniform at a used clothing store, and I'm like, I gotta have that patch because it's the MLM of martial arts, right?
Okay.
And I know people. One guy I know back Midwest who's now a black belt who got sucked up into that MLM early on. Like, had he found the jiu-jitsu first, he would have found what I'm going to call the good one. But he happened to run into one of those MLM things that promises you when you get to a certain level, not only will you have your own school and be making all kinds of money, but you will be able to defend yourself better than ever. And there's an element of all martial arts that has that out there unattainable goal. That if you just give the leader X amount, we will get you to unattainable goal.
Yeah.
That's like the grift, the key to MLMs, right?
Yeah.
Is you're going to be rich because I'm going to convince you how to convince a bunch of people who will then convince others. And before you know it, you have crypto.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're rich.
I think the thing
yeah,
that
you're rich. What about that part?
the thing that I'm seeing is like and if you're entering a group, you got to be aware of the hierarchy, right? But then like if you're looking at the group and you notice that people in the group kind of have blinders on and that they're like blindly accepting
Blindly
what the
loyal.
hierarchy's feeding them,
Yeah.
that can be a little
Off-putting.
off-putting, or just like uncomfortable and can lead to problems, right?
I think so, but it seems like those people who are what I'm going to call mesmerized by that are fairly happy sometimes.
Well, then I was also
They might
I was
need
also
that.
thinking like,
They might need that.
does it matter whether or not you can actually defend yourself from this thing if you think that you can?
Right,
Like, because
right.
isn't it just feeling and thinking like
Well,
you can
yeah,
what
like
you're going for? you know?
Confidence, right? Like
Right.
like just displaying confidence
Yeah.
can help you in
A lot,
street
hugely.
situations, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because so much of street altercations is posturing, visual imagery, audio command, like all that, which is like I've said a bunch of times, that like most muggers aren't going to attack the athletic buff dude with ears like that.
Yeah.
They're going to pick an easier target. And so then, like the problem I have, which is why I say think street, not train street or practice it, is when you start focusing on it too much, it feeds our genetic predisposition for fear.
Yeah.
And we start living life as if there's a bad guy about to mug us around every corner, that any night now is going to be a home invasion robbery. And that is a mindset that not only is statistically unlikely, especially where we are, but doesn't lead to a very comfortable night of eating and watching TV when you're paranoid that the bad guy's about to kick your fucking door in.
Well, it's also more detrimental to your health and your self-preservation in the long run because you're stressing yourself out.
Now you're in tunnel vision.
And but you're stressing yourself out. So you're probably going to develop some health problems. It's going to kill you anyway, so you don't have to worry about defending yourself against some attacker.
Yeah. It's like my unrealistic fear in crowds. Like I can intellectually know, God, that this is stupid of me being anxietous. Look at all these other people enjoying themselves and experiencing no anxiety at all. But then the other part of my brain goes, yeah, they're a bunch of sheep. They're foolishly not thinking about something. And then I'll think, oh, statistically, the chances of a terrorist bomb blocking 3 exits and me being trampled is slim to none. But like when I really have it is when I'm with my kids.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be trying to hold my kid above the crowd, get crushed.
Yeah.
And it's just, I hate crowds.
Yeah.
Hate them.
Yeah.
And people love them. They love, like I hated it even as a high school kid. I remember going to see AC/DC, and I'd already been to punk shows, which were really cool because they were smaller. There were more local, smaller crowds. But I went to this big rock show, and it was at the Coliseum, I think. And not only did my ears feel like they were bleeding because it was so fucking loud, and I didn't know about taking a cigarette butt and putting it in your ear yet. Like I didn't know all those tricks. And it was like hell. Like I felt like I was in hell. The noise was so loud. The crowd, people trying to push to the front.
Well, I'm going to say, I don't know that people love crowds, but that's how many people wanted to go see AC/DC. And it just so happens, like if I could see my favorite band in a tiny venue, wouldn't I prefer that?
I would think.
I might even get to talk to them because they would be right there. But that just doesn't happen because so many people love the favorite band.
That's true.
It's not about the crowd. That's not why people are going to the show. They're going for the band.
I'm sure there's some people that like being in big crowds.
There are people, I think,
like
that
being around other people.
enjoy.
Maybe? I don't know.
I mean,
Might be a stretch.
like when we went to the Green Day concert, that was a really big crowd.
It was a pretty big
And
crowd.
it was a really good show. But, you know, I do prefer a smaller venue because I can actually see the band. Where we were was far back. It was like you had to watch the screen. You
But
know
I
what
was
mean?
quite relieved because I could look over on my left and see a large area of open seats that I felt like if I had to, I could bound over seats and make it to an open area.
Yeah.
And leave me behind with my bad hip.
I would have to carry you. I shouldn't say I. We had a route out.
Okay.
My brain is always analyzing routes out. Ultimately, I would sacrifice myself so you could get out.
Yeah.
But I don't in a crowd.
But I wouldn't
that
make it.
doesn't
I'd be
work.
like, go save yourself.
I like when
I'm going to stay and watch the band.
we're at the slaughterhouse show and the mosh pit starts.
Yep.
You kind of protect Melissa and you kind of shove me over towards the mosh pit. So you like positioned me in front of you and then Melissa
I'm
behind.
smaller, Tobin.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, that was good times.
And in that size crowd, I have zero anxiety.
Yeah, that was good.
It's just it's when I'm at an amusement park and I see a wall of people and a quarter of it is strollers and large
carts.
Overweight people in carts.
In
It's
little
like,
electric motorized vehicles. Oh.
It's like a hellish version of
All
WALL-E.
those people aren't there when it's raining. Don't tell anyone. It never rains here.
So the hierarchy, it ends up being about how the hierarchy is governed. Really, that's the end of the consideration. I feel like, is if you're entering a hierarchical situation, you want to have a good look at how that hierarchy is being governed. Is it an authoritarian situation? Is it a democratic situation? What is it? You know?
In a very simplistic view, when you analyze the combat sports / martial arts, let's say we have the American wrestling model, the American or European boxing gym model, the Asian classical martial arts model. So out of those, the wrestling model is the most like socialism. It's a publicly funded sport. The tax pays the money. The high school is able to build a mat. The coach they hire has a 401k program, a retirement thing. He's probably also the math teacher or whatever, and he's the wrestling coach. And he's not required to recruit to get students, to advertise. We need more wrestlers or our program will fail. It's like that's one model. And it tends to fizzle out after high school or college at best. Because you don't see wrestling gyms opening up on every block. Then you have the boxing gym model, which I call the libertarian model. You open up a gym, usually in a poor part of town because rent is cheap and people who want to box their way out of shit lives tend to be more poor because being hit in the head is something that wealthy and upper class people don't enjoy. So you open up a gym and you get lockers and then managers and trainers come in and everybody's looking for their $1 million baby. If you can get that one fighter to be on a 3-fight contract or I'm your coach until you win a title, then we renegotiate and they might get better lawyers and you get burned and all that. And like they learn through 70 to 100 years of the boxing problems, good boxing managers understand fighter management. UFC in the early days didn't have that because a lot of them came from either the wrestling model, socialism, or the Asian pyramidal scheme, fascism model, which is what those ones are, which is a definite hierarchy. You walk in the room, you bow to the leader, you bow to the system, you do what you're told, you learn exactly the way you're taught. Like I'm exaggerating, but
right.
Like that's the fascist model, the socialist model, libertarian model. And each of those models have benefits and flaws.
Yeah.
And I try to conduct myself both overall in spirit and class by class to try to do the best out of each of those.
Yeah.
Libertarian, meaning if you're really good, I'm going to let you rise to the top. In the authoritarian world, if you're really good, you become a threat to the leadership because that's a threat. So very rarely do those pyramid schools produce world champions because you have to yield to the guy at the top. They do more and more, especially the ones that have adopted some of the aspects of the boxing libertarian world or the wrestling socialist world. And the wrestling world is good because everybody's on the team. We bring everyone. It's very team oriented. Even the weakest guy on the team we value and all. Like it has its things. But then after college, how do you make money in it? So if you want to make money in wrestling, you do entertainment, pro wrestling, because people want to be entertained. And then within a year, you've completely changed the martial art to entertain, which is what happened with judo when it became a sport. And then you add rules. And then people don't watch Newaza because it's boring on the ground. So let's limit the time on the ground. People want to see high throws because it's more exciting. And the rules we create, even with the best intention, often get in the way of growth, which then philosophically says, well, is growth the point? Then we have to analyze what is our purpose again, right?
Yeah.
Boy, I can beat that topic to death. I
Yeah.
did the weave, as Trump says, right?
There you go. So I think the think, street, train, sport, practice, art triangle is a good little system of checks and balances for martial arts
Yes.
hierarchies.
I try to model
if-
that after our Constitution.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really made that connection before, but it definitely acts as the system of checks and balances for how
Because
the
when
martial
it's
arts practice
two, it's
should be.
too much of a duel.
Yeah.
You need that third point to calm our human animalistic binary thinking schizophrenic borderline personality. Yes, no, wrong, right. Like that has to be tamed
Yeah.
and tempered.
Interesting.
And I also think it's really important, well, for us anyways, I feel like to be very respectful of everybody, regardless of where they fall on the hierarchy.
Yes.
That the respect is really the key, because if a new person comes in, like obviously we don't want them to come in and think they're running the show and telling all the experienced grapplers what to do. I'm saying like a new person
Right.
that doesn't know any jiu-jitsu. If a person comes in as a black belt, then, feel it out and find out where they're at among us, to like, I'm thinking about like teaching and controlling the mat space and different stuff like that, but that it really is about mutual respect.
Yes.
And then helping everyone to progress. And if those are your goals, your goal is that everybody respects everybody. It's not like you have to treat me differently because I'm the
guru.
black belt,
Yeah.
I'm the guru. It's not like that. It's like, no, I respect you, and you. It's a mutual respect with the goal of everybody improving in what they're doing. I think that leads to a good dynamic in the hierarchy.
And I think our stories and our movies often present a view that these groups, these hierarchies, are much more authoritarian than they actually really are. Whereas, like, if you're with a group of high-level athletes or operators, their first goal is safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the movie makes it sound like our first goal is to be a badass.
Like
and
Cobra Kai,
like Cobra Kai, right?
like
Yeah.
Johnny Lawrence.
Yeah, it almost seems like if you're not at the tip of the hierarchy, like there's something wrong with you, right? Is the look that you're talking about.
When
And
in
that's not
reality,
necessarily
that's not how the most efficient teams work.
Yeah, and you got to understand that you're engaging in different groups of people for different reasons, and you might just fall in a different spot on the hierarchy for that portion of your life. It doesn't necessarily reflect on who you are as a person, right? Like you don't need to roll into every situation and be the alpha dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? You might roll into a new situation and you're the lowest guy on the totem pole or in the hierarchy for this given situation. And I think
I
that's
don't
okay.
know about you, but like growing up, when you're a young boy and teenager, you're insecure and feeling where you are in all these various group hierarchies. And I think part of the reason why our culture is having so many problems with our young men is the institutions that that idealistically would guide young men into being part of the team leadership roles have become so atomized and fragmented, and you're on social media, and women have their problem of you have to be the best looking, otherwise you're going to be cast out of the tribe, and the young boy has to be tough or the best athlete, otherwise they're cast out of the tribe.
Yeah.
And it's all stuff that preys on those drives to be part of something and part of the group. And I think, like, I know for me, being a stutterer growing up, insecure, all these other things, like, I'm kind of damaged from being so insecure, being young, and denying that I'm insecure. Because if you're caught being insecure, that's the worst thing ever. So you learn to stuff it worse. And women have their whole baggage that they carry on. And I think jiu-jitsu is a really good thing for helping mentor young, insecure people into not only finding community, but realizing that you don't have to be the best guy on the mat. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to be in the top 20%. Like, none of that really matters. But I know that when I was young, I was so lost and clueless and I felt like I did not have that mentorship role, except from what I would watch in movies and TV. And now kids are picking that up from social media influencers or Ryan buying toys or whatever. It's horrible shit.
But I would argue, because I kind of, I know that is a part of life, social media and all that, and YouTubers, hey,
yay, YouTubers,
yay,
like and subscribe.
hey.
Let us influence you.
Yes, but I think that sports are wonderful.
Wonderful.
Not just jiu-jitsu, but like cross country, soccer, for our kids.
All sports are
all
wonderful.
Sports. All the kids that I know that my daughter hangs out with that are involved in different sports, or being involved in theater, or being involved in band. I think that the point is you have to find some kind of tribe of actual humans doing something that you feel passionate about.
Not a freaking Facebook group.
Yes, and having good mentors and teachers, but then also too, like for you and I don't know about Tobin, but I know that you and I, maybe in our homes when we were teenagers, it wasn't super stable, nurturing environment.
No.
So I think that having that is also hugely important and can help with those security issues when the parents are present and able to parent their adolescents and teenagers.
Yes.
So,
and at the same time, I think it's important to, if you were like in a bad home or bad life or whatever it was, to acknowledge it, that you were a victim of, and then quickly get out of victim mindset.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to stay in the, I was a victim, therefore. But it's also unhealthy to dismiss the part of victimness. Yeah. Because that's what I would do. I'd say, fuck that victim shit. Yeah.
Well, I don't consider myself a victim. I consider myself that I was in a home where things didn't work out the way that maybe my mom, I know you wanted it to work out differently. Yeah. But it worked out a certain way that wasn't the most conducive to having a stable environment for me as a teen. And that's okay, because eventually I found my way. But I did go through some really rough years, and it wasn't even that long. But I found, I guess I'm lucky enough to have found not only jiu-jitsu, but other things that helped me feel like I was part of a group that was supportive and move forward, and eventually come back with at least my mom, and have a good relationship now.
That sounds like a really healthy way to think about it.
Yeah, so I don't feel like a victim. I feel like that was it was circumstance that wasn't maybe like ideal. And it's okay.
Book recommendation, read Sebastian Junger's Tribes.
Good
book.
The one thing this is making me think of is I just feel like it's kind of unfortunate because we all have to operate in hierarchies with all the different stuff we do, whether it's work or family or sports or whatever.
Yes, everything.
That there's so much focus on the top of the hierarchy, right? Like there's a gajillion books on being a good leader, but how many books are there on
Being
you
a
know,
good team player.
being a good team? Yeah. And I think some people do hit on that, like you do hear about that, but, or not even that, not even just being a good team player, but like understanding what you're doing as a whole. You know, you are in a group. At some point you might be a good team player. At some point you might be the leader of the group. Like you kind of have to understand the whole thing. And it's unfortunate that it's just so focused to the top. Like how many people do you know in jiu-jitsu where like they just chase that apex thing? Like they'll go like, oh, I wanted to train with the best guy, so I went and I trained under the best guy, and like
So
as
many.
if like that's the most important thing to be. And somehow if your affiliation with that, like I was thinking about like
Well, that's that fascistic pyramid model. Ironically, in the boxing model, the libertarian, or the wrestling model, socialism, the coach isn't necessarily the toughest guy in the room.
yeah.
Whereas they somehow, in the fascistic pyramid martial arts model, it's almost like you have to be able to trace your lineage to the toughest guy ever.
Yeah, and
It's weird,
well, I
right?
was thinking like, you know, for instance, people that want to train with Hickson.
Yeah.
You know, I know you really like to go train with him.
Yes.
You like to learn from him.
I loved training with Hickson.
And it's more of a intellectual kind of like he's got the information that you want at this point in
He
your
has a
game.
very, what I call a very efficient blend of body, mind, and spirit with jiu-jitsu that works very well for me as I'm no longer a young athlete who can do a back tuck and a handstand.
But I feel like for a lot, like that's very awesome that you have that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that they see Hickson as like the top of the pyramid for jiu-jitsu guys.
They
And so they think that-
idolize. They idolize him in a way that they're putting him on a pedestal, and if it's not that way, then it's no way.
But
Like
by
he's the-
osmosis, they'll become Hickson themselves.
Exactly. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right? It's like you're going to get this, go train with him, you're going to get a novel experience, and somehow you're going to absorb his whole lifetime worth of being out there fighting as the stud and doing all this stuff in your novel experience with him. And I think that that's like,
It's not
it's
right.
a little weird, right? Like you're
It's
not,
weird.
they're not considering the whole thing, right? And you might get a much more deep and fulfilling jiu-jitsu experience training with the guy in the strip mall,
That's true.
right?
You have no idea.
Then would you
yeah.
would go and having a couple classes with Hicks and Gracie.
But at the same
Possibly,
time,
you know?
but at the same time, I feel like it's maybe a certain type of person
Yes.
that wants to do like that Hickson experience versus training at the strip mall. You know what I mean? So for them, that is what they want. That is what they need. And for
Yeah.
the strip mall person, that is what they need. And it's not that one is better than the
Yes.
other. It's just that we're all individuals. It's like, why would somebody come train with us here at the garage when they could go to 18 other places that I could throw a rock at from here?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that if you understand what's happening in a larger picture and see the whole thing, then maybe you can kind of go like, oh, that's cool. That's cool for that guy. That's cool for this guy. That's a cool thing for this person. That's a cool thing for this person. And this is what works for me. And find your own thing. It doesn't mean because you don't go train with Hickson that you're not somehow a great jiu-jitsu guy. You know what I mean?
Or
that's
that's the only way. That's so.
Or
That's,
Hickson, or fill in any other like current world
I just
champion,
use him because he's
whatever.
such a like.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks. For
And that's
clarifying
like,
that. Yeah.
again, the thing that seems to be more prominent in jiu-jitsu and Asian martial arts than it does in boxing and wrestling. It's not so focused on, oh, my coach was the NCAA champion and won the Olympic gold.
or this one.
Your coach only won the bronze, therefore I'm better than you. It's like,
Or where'd you get your black belt? Where'd you this? Who'd you da 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 da?
where'd you get your
you
black
know?
belt from?
Yeah.
What's your lineage? Yeah.
I'm-
Like that is weird.
I think it's
Well,
kind
it's
of weird.
hierarchical.
People are always very impressed when I say where I got my black belt from.
That's
Good.
good.
And it feels good in the moment and in general. But
But it's also like if I just show up somewhere to train,
yeah,
and that's what they care about. I care about that I'm showing up there to train
having a good experience.
and having
yeah.
a good experience, not
Yeah.
like what, who have you trained with in your life and where did you learn your jiu-jitsu? That doesn't matter to me. What matters is our role.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe it's judgmental of me to judge those people for wanting to know like that stuff about me, but I just kind of feel like it shouldn't really matter.
I mean,
right?
yeah, it should not be
What
the
matters?
thing
Does anything
that,
matter?
Well, when
that
you
you
roll,
worry
you
about
see how
before you've even experienced their role. You're more worried about their lineage. It's like I'd rather roll with you first and then go, wow, that was good. I liked how you did that. It reminded me very much of a Jean-Jacques style or a whatever. And then you go, no, I actually learned that from Professor Joe Schmo. Oh, yeah, he's an awesome instructor. I'm not going to go, what world titles did he win? Right?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't necessarily mean you're a great instructor when you have world titles, too.
Yeah. Open minds and open hearts. All right.
Feel the pain.
Do you have anything else you want to say about government and hierarchy? Or
Government and hierarchy in politics are such
that's such a deep,
topics
crazy topic. Yeah.
that inflame people's emotions.
Yeah.
More so than religion.
Yeah.
And it's almost like political ideology has replaced what religion was 200 years ago.
Yeah.
In terms of people's emotional attachment to an ideology.
Yeah.
And as a philosopher, amateur philosopher, I don't get paid and I'm not an expert and I can't quote you cite and verse where the theories came from. I'm more interested in the theory usually than who did it. But I do find that I'm absolutely fascinated how passionate people get about things to me that seem so narrow-minded in their scope, regardless whether it leans left or right and all that stuff. And I largely think, like, I believe in both the 80-20 rule on everything and the rule of the thirds, which is another cool way. It's like any election, you get less than 66% of the people vote, and there's 33% of the people in any 100% group. There's 33% that pay attention to what's going on, and out of them, there's thirds again. And we really are rudderless, as Alan Moore said. It's like our pattern recognition software projects far more control than there actually really is. And yeah, we're in wild times. And
I feel like the times are always wild.
I think some times are more wild than others.
I don't know.
And I am not.
There's always stuff going on.
There's always things.
Stuff going on.
But I think, well, I mean, I'm going to not give any political opinions on this show.
I hope so.
Not because I don't have them, but because I try my best to respect other people's political opinions, even when they're the opposite of mine, because I really do think respect and compromise is the way forward. And pumping opinions out on social media, although that has to be done, otherwise we can't have elections and you don't know who you're voting for and why. Like, obviously there's some people whose role is to give such opinions. Mm-hmm. And when an athlete or a celebrity has an opinion, fucking fine. Like, people are only mad at it when it isn't matching their opinion.
Yeah.
Like, they're really happy when celebrity agrees with them.
Yeah.
But then when they don't, they're like, why does this celebrity have an opinion?
Yeah.
Shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
So our show, we don't have opinions, but we aim to respect everybody's opinion.
We don't voice
That's our
opinions.
aim, but our aim is to respect everybody's opinion, provide food for thought on topics relating to martial arts and personal growth,
critical
to
thinking.
help everyone to become a better them.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Just like our garage, little microcosm of that, to help spread that same vision on a more macro level.
And I like how, I think it was Renee Brown, I think in one of her one of her TED Talks or whatever, which is really good. It's really hard to hate in person. And it's really easy to hate when you're staring at a screen.
Yeah.
To watch the goofball far leftist or far right winger do something that makes you cringe and hate them. But in person, you meet them and you're like, hey, this person's actually pretty cool. And I think that's the toxic nature of the age we're in, is it's so easy to find something to hate.
It's the detriment of social media for
Yeah.
sure, because sitting with the person and having a conversation is way different than just listening to everything they think in their brain
Yeah,
on the screen
right. Including what they eat.
when they pooped.
And the other thing that I would highly suggest everybody read, which was my second favorite book of 2015, Tom Nichols' The Death of Expertise, which talks a lot about how the internet turned everybody into an expert.
Oh, nice.
And it's got great
And a
views
philosopher.
on WebMD. It made everybody then, when they show up, they question their doctor.
But in a way,
it's
come
good
on.
too.
Okay, because in a way, the doctor might not have thought about certain things.
True.
So it feels like when I go to the doctor, she sends me to 20 different doctors because I go, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this?
Well,
Anyways.
remember that, like, I don't know, it was a meme running around 15 years back where you go to the doctor, you're at home, you have an ailment, you look online, shit, I better go to the doctor, I have this, then they examine, walk out of the room, the doc looks it up online, comes back in and says,
Yeah,
right?
they'll give me some printout from the internet on the thing that I have and hand it to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, right? So they should be some sort of a filter for you, right?
Yeah.
But who controls the filter? See, that's where
the medical
we get
education
into the
system,
whole, what they call the fourth branch of
And then
government,
there'll be
which is the
some
press.
drug that treats some ailment and you'll be taking it, but then they'll find out that drug isn't actually good for you. And then they take that drug away. Oh.
And 100 years ago, or
Can't win.
200, the best medical advice, leeching, other weird things, putting mercury in your body to sweat it out, or like whatever it is, like we've now figured out is like exactly what you don't want to do, which makes you think, well, then how do I know what the current thing is right? And then you want to go inject me or something. Like, I understand why people became anti-vax. I personally am not, but I respect you if you are. Like, I get why philosophically, medically, why all these reasons you can say, I'm not going to trust said expert on their thing. But I also understand how that can be very bad for society. So,
yeah, I mean, but you have to have the basic understanding that science is like supposed to be a positive feedback loop, right? Where it's constantly improving, so things are on an upward trajectory. And it's not like
we
the
believe
science
that.
of,
I believe that the scientific community is more or less set up to engage in critical thinking, constantly questioning yourself. Like it's been said, the philosophy of science, what makes it so good
The
or
scientific
awesome,
method?
yes, is that when you have an idea, you try to prove yourself wrong, not right.
Yeah.
Whereas our human nature is to have an opinion and then go find things that support my opinion.
Yeah.
Instead of you have an opinion and go, let's see where I'm wrong, and continually attempt to disprove it, which is why in your high school and college 101 science class, you repeat the experiment that's already proven it, but you have to prove it for yourself. And you're trying to prove the hypothesis wrong.
And you're also judged by a panel of your peers.
And judged by a panel of
wash and repeat over
peer
and over again.
review.
Yeah.
And like it is, I think, a very good system of organization and thought. And a jiu-jitsu mat takes elements of that. We say, let's see if this arm lock really works.
Yeah.
Let's try to prove it wrong. Let's try to escape out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's scientific method.
I'm going to get this guy today.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it didn't really go as I thought it was going to go. So, yeah, same over.
And that loop, keeps improving the knowledge.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. Hopefully
Karl
people...
Popper, father of philosophy of science.
Hopefully people want to hear more talks like this and we can get on some more philosophical topics in the future. For now, we should hit a gym shout out and move on to our next segment. What do you guys think? You're not quite ready, are you? So we're going to do a gym shout out and then we're going to hit a cue from the hotline.
Ooh.
And then I got a really cool comment that I pulled from the YouTubes that is, it's not really a question, it's just more of like a statement that I thought was interesting that we could talk about. And let's just do that while she digs up the...
Let's do it. Yep.
So someone on the YouTube comments said that the Think Street, Train Sport, Practice Art is actually something from Kodokan Judo, that concept.
I've never seen it in Kodokan Judo before. I don't want to claim I'm the guy who invented it.
You definitely are
But I'm pretty sure that that's a philosophy that I arrived at on my own. Someone else might have simultaneously arrived, or 100 years earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But it's interesting, right? There's nothing new under the sun, right?
there's nothing you say. Yeah.
And so basically this guy was saying Shobu Ho, Rentai Ho, and Shunsen Ho, which translate to self-defense, sport, and moral formation through art.
I think that's similar to my philosophy.
Similar. Yeah.
But like, you have think, train, practice.
Uh-huh.
What differentiates, I believe, my philosophy from those other ones. Yes, we have street art sport. A lot of places advertise where, and back 100 years ago, say we do street self-defense, we do the art of jiu-jitsu and the sport. But the order of whether you're thinking, training, or practicing is critical to my particular philosophy. In other words, if you practice street and you think sport and you train the art, you're not going to get the same effect.
Right. Yeah, yours is like tuned up a little bit for...
It's a little different, I think.
Yeah. But it's
I'm
just
proud
interesting.
of it.
I'm proud of it as well for you, and I think it's awesome. I just think it's interesting that somebody picked this up as a historic thing, right? And you got to figure all this stuff, like all the jiu-jitsu stuff is old, ancient stuff, all the techniques that we think are crazy. I saw a video the other day of guys, back in the 1930s or something like that, doing De La
Oh, and
Hiva.
judo rolling, yeah.
And De La Hiva, butterfly sweeps, all kinds of
butterfly
stuff.
sweep,
Yeah, and
reversals,
this is all...
And it only takes less than half a generation when you alter the rules where it vanishes.
I think it's weird too sometimes. Like
it goes extinct.
You were just saying like, oh, how do we know that today's medicine isn't like the old medicine? And I feel like people forget so quickly, and you think that everything that you're looking at is the new hot thing.
Yeah.
But it's actually all old, and how we lose that wisdom so quickly.
How old are you now?
39.
Okay, so you're now at that age where I call it the skinny tire, the fat tire. Skinny jeans, fat jeans. You've watched something come in style and then out of style and back in now once.
Yes.
I'm at the age where I'm watching it come through the third time.
Because he's going to be 60.
Because I'm going to be 60. And I remember when the 70s bell bottoms were in. I'm like, I never thought that would possibly come back.
And I wore them in the 90s.
Because in my childhood...
Clubbing.
Right. Because that's my childhood. And then in the 80s, where I'm a young adult and cool, like, ew, bell bottoms. But then all of a sudden, the 90s, they're in.
Back in.
And then, like,
Now we're back. They're
bell
back.
bottoms
Are they
and
back right now?
platforms.
The
I have no idea.
baggy pants are
Baggy
back.
pants are coming back.
Yeah.
Baggy pants are
Those
coming
giant-
I just wear it all because I just don't even know what the fashion is anymore.
I
Baggy
believe in
sweaters.
size-appropriate clothing.
Oh, someone reached out asking what your pants were.
Cool.
I
K-U-H-L.
know. I
Cool.
wrote them back. I was like, Chris only wears cool.
My favorite pair of pants.
Nice.
Because
That's correct.
and chiefly because it's got the phone pocket.
Yeah.
I hate putting my phone in here or the back and
Yeah,
sitting
these
on
are
it.
kind of nice too when you have them in your leggings. You
Yep.
put your phone right there.
You need a
Boom.
phone pocket.
Yeah, maybe I should get a pair of those.
Yeah, that would
There
look
you
really
go.
good on you.
Nice.
Spats.
It's fats. All right. Gym shout out.
Jim,
Let's hit
shout
it.
out today is going to be Combat Base Shasta, aka
love Shasta.
Mendez Jiu-Jitsu in
Oh, hell
Palo
yeah.
Cedro, California. They take pride in their instruction catering to various needs, whether one wants to learn jiu-jitsu for self-defense, competition, mental clarity, or fitness. They have something for everyone. The techniques and mindset taught by their instructors have been tested in combat and real-world violent encounters. Their priority is not about collecting medals and trophies, but rather instilling the confidence and tools needed for students to challenge themselves and become better human beings. Head instructor Nathan Mendez, who also has a spot over in Hawaii, in Kona.
Yeah, in Kona. And Nate's one of the guys, super humble, was a Marine, and some of the things that he's done and experienced as a Marine are really awesome, including the Presidential Guard.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like at the White House, the Marine doing that in the background.
He's like the most mellow. His energy is so mellow and calm and kind.
Calm and kind.
I'd almost describe him as sweet.
Yeah.
But he looks gnarly. I mean,
He's
he's
a
like
real
a
big guy.
gnarly looking dude.
Yep.
Gnarly looking dude,
He's a
but he
beast.
puts off such a nice energy. I love that guy.
Which also emphasizes that why that personality type is so good for high level things, because you want to have a calm. It's like I remember learning in Army medic school, like they did a little acting, like which one looks more efficient. You know, the person's leg gets shot. The person that runs up and goes, "Oh my God, your legs are shot." Or the one, "Oh, your legs have been shot. No big deal. Let's just wrap it up." Like you want calmness in a calamity.
Yeah.
Which is what I try to do as a parent. Obviously, I have a very energetic, high-speed thing. So when shit gets bad with my kid, I have to think counterinstinctive.
Yeah.
To relax and be as calm as I can and not try to match the child's bad energy.
Yeah.
That's a real hard concept for some of us to grasp.
Yeah.
Took me a while to.
That's definitely a jiu-jitsu concept. You don't want to match the energy of the other person. You want to do your
I
own
found it
game.
far easier out there in the world, like jiu-jitsu, police work, like all that, than I did with my own kids at home.
Well, yeah, you can step off the mats, but your kids you can't.
Yeah, when you're tired and all you want to do is sleep, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't show up to jiu-jitsu class if you need a nap. You go take a nap.
Yeah.
True.
It's definitely one of the challenges of it. Cool. Yeah, nice gym shout out. That's sick. All right. We got a cue that came in as a hotline call. So again, if you want to hit the hotline, 949-791-7763, hit us up. We love these hotline calls.
They're hot.
They're hot. They're coming in hot. You can text also. You also can email us, podcast@combatbase.com, and we'll get you on the show here. So let's take this cue.
What are the fundamentals? Every time I roll with black belts, they always say, "I'm still working on the fundamentals. Always work on your fundamentals. Don't forget about the fundamentals." Can you guys explain what these fundamentals are? I'm sure they're very different depending on who you ask. Thank you.
The fundamentals, like I'm just going to jump it out there. There are technical fundamentals, tactical fundamentals, and strategical ones. And they're not necessarily always present and the same.
I would say, so for me, when I'm teaching and thinking about jiu-jitsu, particularly on the ground jiu-jitsu, I'm thinking about base as being a primary foundation for everything. And I'm thinking about concepts. So base on the top, on the bottom in guard recovery, being able to maintain a guard and an attack from the guard. I also think about things like being aware of head position, being aware of where my arms are at, that go from every single space in jiu-jitsu. And then, of course, like was said by the caller, I think depending on the instructor, they're going to have certain techniques that they categorize as fundamentals that one should be aware of. But I think it's even more important to be aware of principles, Because once you have these, if you're sparring on the mat and you're thinking about principles like base, like keeping your elbows in so someone can't just drag you around, like protecting your neck, like building frames and learning how to move your hips for guard recovery, and to start to set up attacks from the guard, then you're going to have a better experience than if you're trying to recall 7 steps from a certain move that you learned 3 months ago.
Yeah, I call the frame, flow, and weight distribution is the fundamental concept that you find in each of the fundamental movements. And there tend to be 3 fundamental things. Like there's 3 fundamental arm bars in the guard, 3 fundamental chokes, 3 fundamental sweeps, 3 fundamental hold downs.
And that's just because he likes the number 3.
3 process of the mouth. So when I think of, that's what I'm thinking of. And I'm also, to use the analogy of chess, the fundamentals are knowing how each piece moves to where you don't have to sit there and go, wait, was it the pawn or the knight that jumps over? You fundamentally understand the game. Then you can work on your strategies, refinements, and there's fundamental tactics, and there's fundamental strategy. And then each of those fractals off into other 3s. And then that concept is the fundamental concept to grasp the efficiency of the art of jiu-jitsu.
And I also think it depends on what kind of game you want to have, because once you decide what style you have, there's techniques and principles that are fundamental to that style.
Yes.
If it's, a certain, style of guard that you like to play, or passing way that you like to pass, you're going to have to integrate that into, what you make your own.
Like an example, like daily heave a guard. A lot of the old school guys do not consider that to be fundamental in any way. Whereas I kind of do.
It's fundamental to my game,
think
for sure.
It's a fundamental part of the open guard.
Yeah.
But I don't think everybody has to do it.
But not everyone
right?
has to
So
do it. Yeah.
that's why I think in this art that's so expansive and so limitless that, again, you get to decide what your game is and how to integrate fundamental concepts into whatever style you want to
Because
have.
the concept is more important. The principle of how do I frame, how do I flow, and where do I distribute my weight?
Yeah.
And how am I connecting with my opponent? Like when I think of fundamental, that's what I think principally we're talking about, regardless of what technique it is.
And adding in something like off balancing and feeling how you can, bait something to get something else, and counterbalancing. And
very much in judo is that, right?
For
Those
sweeps, because it
foundation
depends on
principles of judo.
right. Because again, in this art where there's a lot of different positions, so what is fundamental to doing a sweep? What is fundamental to passing a guard? What is fundamental to holding someone down in a mount or escaping a mount? It's like there's really a lot to it.
I feel like I like the description you gave with the 3 components, because it kind of creates like an energy or a spirit or a vibe to the jiu-jitsu that you're seeing. And you can almost like watch it happen and go like, oh, that's...
The gist or the geist.
Yeah, it's not exactly the moves that they're doing, but you can tell it's like fundamentally sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I also kind of like that it's backwards. It's like you're going to get this deep understanding of what the fundamentals are after like years of experience and training on the mat. You're not necessarily going to be spoon-fed it as a brand new person. You're going to have to take what you're given and then like find it on your own. And then that's how you find the good fundamental understanding.
I think so.
So to answer this person's question, it's you need to just keep on training, man. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, but I also feel like too, like as an instructor, I really try to deliver that. If I'm asked to go teach a class, I want to try to communicate principles more than techniques. Because for me, that's how I can learn a principle in a class and I probably won't remember the technique.
But I think the archetype in martial arts is always this like instructor that is basically like almost disenchanted with all the students, right? No one's willing to train enough to find what the instructor is trying to give them, right? So it's like this expectation that the student's going to come to the instructor and absorb everything from a class. It's not really the case. It's like the student really has to like put the time and energy and effort in and then take what the instructor is giving them and sort of like hopefully integrate some of it, but they're really the one finding the truth in the situation through their hard work, right?
Yeah.
But you do your best to give them that. But the fact of the matter is,
But I
they're not
don't
out there
feel
grinding.
like every instructor does that. Just saying.
Yeah, no, for
I
sure.
feel like I went to a whole lot of classes where they're just like, okay, do this, then do this, then do that.
Well, again,
Okay, I learned nothing. Let's roll.
again, you go into any kind of jiu-jitsu class, an immediate hierarchy is going to form, or the guy teaching the class is at the top of the hierarchy for that moment. You need to understand the history of this person, why they ended up at the top of the hierarchy, what's motivating them to be at the top of the hierarchy, and then from there decide, is it worth spending my time getting the information from this person? Because there are people that are going to teach classes just for the money, just to show off, or whatever, but there are people that are going to try to genuinely offer information that can help the people that are there. So maybe that ties us back into our original topic. Maybe not.
Sort of.
All right. You guys want to end it out?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. We're out of here. Thanks, guys.
Peace
Good
out.
pod.
And remember,
Pound, like, and subscribe.